Okay, moving on in Chapter 3 to Part 3, starting on page 87 with attitudes and motivation. Uh, one of the points is we often have an attitude toward the foreign language that we're studying, or the country, basically. And usually we have a positive attitude. That's usually why we're learning the language. But if you some people are forced to learn a foreign language like English, even though they may not like American culture or be kind of anti-US, or they might be anti-English too, because as English becomes this world language, some people don't really like that. They don't really like that influence that it has. So it's just to make the point that the more positive you are about, I would say, the culture, then the easier it's going to be to learn that language. And you might have some resistance to it if you're kind of forced into a situation, or a refugee or someone that may not necessarily want to make that move. And so that's sort of a psychological aspect. And otherwise, as far as motivation too, there's different types of motivation. I may have the motivation to pass a language exam to enter university, as you think of like a typical EFL type of situation. Or you might have the motivation to really get into that culture and travel there and get to know those people. So that's going to be probably more productive type motivation. You might want to move up into society, get a job, get an education, kind of using language to open up all those doors. So we have instrumental versus integrative motivation. Instrumental motivation is sort of like using that language to further your career or enter university, get a job, but the integrative motivation is you're motivated to really be a part of that culture, especially if you've immigrated somewhere, but also just if you're a traveler and you really love those people. Going on to motivation in the classroom, which is page 88, I usually say the biggest motivator that I use is just to try to make the class interesting, make the class interesting, make the English, like idioms and things that they really feel are relevant or useful. And that's really going to motivate. But there's other things, of course, group work, pair work can be motivating. Games can be real motivating, like competition. And just having students participate a lot, I think, is motivating. Asking a lot of questions of the students so they can express themselves, and feel good about that. And obviously as teachers, part of our job is to motivate the students. Sometimes I like to talk about how, English will help your future, and learning a second language can open your mind, kind of motivating them that way as well. And of course, you want the class to be challenging, and people are motivated by challenge so that it's not too easy, but obviously not too hard as well. And obviously that supportive atmosphere, which ESL is kind of known for, because we're used to, there's kind of a service industry aspect to teaching ESL, where we're helping people adapt to the new culture, helping people live here, or just helping an international student have a really positive experience and getting through the culture shock. Also, autonomy in terms of encouraging the students to study for themselves, on their own, be self-motivated. And now, with the computer and laptops and the internet, I think it's easier for students to work on their own and do some reading and listen to things on the internet. Students really like feedback, obviously. It's funny because I think even students sometimes even don't mind having a test, because the test kind of motivates them and gives them a chance to see how they're doing. Students tend to kind of want grades, and they're taking it as feedback, basically. And finally, in terms of identity and ethnic group affiliation on page 89, basically, these are the social factors you might see for motivation, where you want to kind of, move up in the society, and a lot of times there's what they call a power relationship between the two languages. So if you're kind of like in the minority group, then you want to learn the majority group's language so that you feel like you can kind of move up in that. And and sometimes, especially kids, they don't like being labeled as like the ESL student, and they want to be mainstreamed, and they're very happy when they get out of that ESL track and they feel that they're just a regular student. Sometimes I see this sort of power relationship. I feel the other way, where American people sometimes when they study Spanish, they kind of slaughter it. And it's supposed to be kind of funny, like una cerveza por favor, or gracias amigo, or kind of condescending, using Spanish like in a condescending way. If you've ever been to like Baja California and see how American people kind of go down there and they kind of look down on Spanish and just learn a few words like like hola. I mean, words, there just seems to be this sort of pride about English, and that really rubs me wrong, because language is such a way to show respect for people. I studied Spanish, so when I use Spanish in Mexico, for example, they're so honored, and they're so flattered that I've taken the time to really respect their language and learn their language. So it builds like instant rapport with them, because it is showing someone respect when you take interest, in their culture. Adult education is known for kind of the night classes. You have like working class people taking night classes, coming from like service industry jobs, and there's a sense that you're really kind of helping them move up in their job and move forward in what they want to do. Some students will kind of, because language is connected with identity, you'll find some students seem to be kind of possibly holding on to their accent, because that's their identity. Like they don't want to always sound just like, a native speaker, whether it be consciously or subconsciously, because pronunciation ties in with our identity. Actually, the person can be really successful in a foreign language without having perfect pronunciation. So we kind of allow room for that as well.